and thanks for joining us. Let me start by apologizing for coming late. Just a whole lot of reorganizing going on at the back end here. But we're here and we're ready to dish out the biggest political stories to you today and analyze them. And we know that when powerful and influential personalities tussle, it is to the detriment of their followers, as it is the weak that gets trampled in such battles. Hello, and thanks for joining us on Political Standpoint. I am Precious Amayo. Now, for those who have been following the political developments in the country, you will understand that the River State governor and PDP stalwart Wike is not a happy man, and he's doing everything that he can to ensure that the individuals responsible for its unhappiness also have sleepless nights. The chief recipient of Governor Wike's verbal missiles is the presidential candidate of the PDP, and that's Atiku Abubakar. Both men fell out after the party's presidential primary, and then the subsequent emergence of Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa as the vice presidential candidate of the PDP, a position Wike coveted. Now, efforts to resolve the issues and reconcile warring teams have so far proved abortive, with Wike now publicly romanticizing political opponents of the PDP. Now, if the PDP, which is considered Nigeria's main opposition party, fails to pull its house in order before the 2023 elections and goes into the polls with a divided house, what are their chances of wresting power from the governing All Progressives Congress? And here to discuss that with me, we're joined by a public affairs analyst, Femi Lawson. Good to have you join us.
Good afternoon.
You would have listened to the comments coming from just the news. You would have seen the reports of the lawsuit filed by Wike, and I think there was somebody else who was also part of that lawsuit. But the Governor Wike has now said that he's not responsible for that. He is also now blaming the Atiku campaign. But let me just get your thoughts on all of that.
Well, I think, good afternoon once again. The rumored suit by Governor Wike, which has now been debunked by the governor, is something that is not alien, especially when you look at how far politicians can go in seeking redress in electoral disputes. But unfortunately, it looks so much like Governor Wike in the last couple of days and weeks have been going against his own vow. Beyond the suit, which he has now distanced himself from, especially for such lacking the content of time that it should have been filed. You must understand that for those who followed the processes leading to the primaries of the PDP, and of course, events on the day of the PDP, Governor Wike was one of those very few aspirants that vowed to abide by the outcome of the PDP primaries. Of course, we all watched it. We've watched it on TVC on so many occasions and some other media, where Governor Wike vowed to abide by the outcome of the primaries. And it's unfortunate that the same person is now, outrightly going against the outcome of that primaries. And of course, have been since making so many public comments in respect of the outcome of the PDP primaries.
And I want to get to how Governor Wike has been reacting to all of this in a moment. But let me ask you, because as I said earlier, Governor Wike is saying, look, this has nothing to do with me. It is from those loyal to the presidential candidate of the PDP, Atiku Abubakar. But they have also denied that anyone in their camp is responsible for this. What sense do you get in terms of this lawsuit? What exactly do you think is playing out within the PDP, and what could be responsible, or who could be responsible for the lawsuit?
Of course, for a party that is seeking to come back to power, for a party that has been so divided on so many occasions, one would have expected that leaders of the party, including Governor Wike, would chart the course of harmonizing members of the party ahead of the general election, rather than going into another round of battles like we're currently witnessing. It's unfortunate that Governor Wike wants to blame members or supporters of the candidate of the PDP, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, rather than playing the role of standing as a leader and working with other leaders, including the former vice president, who is now their candidate, to form a common front into the election. I don't think it is enough for Governor Wike to continue to take his stance on the basis of what people who who he has assumed as supporters of the PDP candidate, for whatever they are doing currently. I think Governor Wike should have focused more on his role as a leader of the party, and of course work with the candidate like he has promised in order to take the party, into the election as one house. But what Governor Wike is doing shows that he has personal, anger issues against the candidate, not necessarily because of what is presumed as what the supporters of the candidates are doing. If Governor Wike does not have personal issues with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar, I don't think he should be interested so much in what supporters of Alhaji Atiku Abubakar are doing, because I'm not sure any of these supporters is referring to are in the category of a governor, talkless of a governor of Rivers State and a former presidential aspirant. I think he should have looked beyond that and look at the fate of their party and work with the candidate, rather than holding on to what he presumed are the opinions of the supporters of the candidate. And till now, Alhaji Atiku Abubakar has not been seen at any point in time, disparaging Governor Wike or saying anything against them. I think that should have been enough for Governor Wike to work with Alhaji Atiku Abubakar as leaders of the party to take their party, to the election.
Well, let me ask you, because there are those who say that, look, you cannot beat a child and ask that child not to cry, that Governor Wike feels aggrieved, and just because of that report where it was said that, I think it was it a 12-man or 14-man committee, I can't remember how many, or 17-man committee, I think it was, and three of them went with Okowa and 14 went with Wike, and then that perhaps is the foundation of the anger, because it looks like people wanted me, but you did not, and that he wasn't even, there was no attempt by the presidential candidate to reach him in person. It doesn't look like he was sending emissaries to him. Do you think that he's not within his, I don't want to use the word rights, but at least is it not okay for someone who feels aggrieved to at least voice out his grievances? And to what extent do you think he should go?
Well, I think the biggest ambition Governor Wike had before now was to be the presidential candidate of the party. At no time did I want to remember that Governor Wike contested to be vice president, of the PDP. If he had wanted desperately to be the vice presidential candidate, I know would have been one of those governors that would have supported the former vice president Atiku Abubakar to become the PDP candidate. But be that as it may, now the body supposedly, of course, which was said to have consulted to nominate Governor Wike and Governor of Delta State, Ifeanyi Okowa, as a likely, candidate, the running mate rather, to the presidential candidate. All these were internal political parties' affairs. These structures were not, of course, legal structures known beyond what was and even the voting, the supposed voting was also a secret affair. And if it has been the decision of the party to choose somebody instead of Governor Wike, which has now been endorsed by virtually every organ of the party, submitted to the INEC, I think Governor Wike should move beyond the current state of anger. If he is truly a party leader that we have always known him to be, to work with the candidate. And I want to believe that former Vice President Atiku Abubakar must have been reaching out to Governor Wike. Of course, I don't know what may have been going on, but I know that the option of dialogue is never closed from the interactions and what we have been reading, even from the camp of the PDP presidential candidate. What is now left, I think, is for Governor Wike to leave, what he's currently doing in the media space and the public, show of his, anger, and go into their political party caucuses or wherever they converge and meet, and express his anger to the leadership of the party, express his anger to the candidate of the party, and seek grants of working together. Of course, politics is all about interest. Whatever is Governor Wike's anger today is about his interest, in what becomes the government of PDP if they eventually win. So Governor Wike should be able to go and discuss this with the candidate and the party, and they have, a common ground moving forward into the election. I don't think he can continue to fight, against the party where he is a governor and where he's also supporting a candidate to succeed him in the state of Rivers. I know Governor Wike will not want to destroy PDP to the extent that he will destroy the party that is a member, and the chances of his own successor emerging from their own political party in Rivers State also. I think he should leave the public space and leave these demonstrations and, of course, coincide with the party leadership and have a common front.
Mm. He says, and that's Governor Wike, he says that he's a party man and that he will always be a party man. But when you look at his recent moves, he seems to be, in quotes, hanging out a lot with members of the PDP, especially governors of the PDP. And we also saw the Honorable Speaker, Femi Lawson, there to inaugurate projects. Most of them are there to inaugurate projects. What do you think is playing out? Do you think that, look, whilst he says he is a party man, that somehow his body language feels like he seems not to be working with his party at the moment?
Well, Governor Wike is a beautiful bride that any political party want to have in its fold. And if you listen to Governor Wike during the visit of the Right Honorable Speaker of the House of Representatives, he stated it clearly that he has invited Honorable Gbajabiamila as the Speaker of Nigeria's House of Representatives, not as an APC leader or whatever you may want to call it. So Governor Wike, even despite his annoyance, have always expressed the fact that he's a committed member of his party, the PDP. And he must not also undermine the fact that politicians with their interests would always want to woo Governor Wike. And that's why you've seen him, having major politicians from the opposition, from the main political party, the ruling political party, APC, around him in the recent time. But I don't think that is enough to assume that Governor Wike is about jumping the ship, to the other, side of the coin, which is the APC. I want to believe that he remains committed and he has more at stake in the PDP than he may want to go and bargain for in the APC or any other political party at this present point in time. So I believe the PDP should, of course, reopen every door that seems to have been closed for discussion. And Governor Wike should, of course, be humble enough to also go into their in-house and discuss these issues rather than bringing it at every opportunity to the public.
But do you actually think they're wooing him or that he's trying to pass a message? Because in some cases, some of those invitation was done by him to come and inaugurate projects in the state. Do you think that that's wooing him or he's trying to send a message to his party in terms of how important he thinks he is, especially in this election?
Everyone knows Governor Wike is important. Even the oppositor, his opponents, and the politicians in the other political parties also know that Governor Wike is an important politician. And that is why it is difficult even for any politician, irrespective of a political party, to turn down invitation from Governor Wike to visit Rivers State, especially when you look at his record of performance as one of the governors that have done, of course, excellently well in the area of infrastructure development of the state. So it is not impossible that you find politicians from all political parties wanting to associate with Governor Wike. But I don't think that is enough for us to assume that this newfound relationship with some of these politicians in the other political parties are indications that he's willing to leave the party, that he's a leader and join the All Progressives Congress or any other political party. I think that is my view about it.